It may be Donald Trump's administration, but it's certainly Elon Musk's priorities and business conflicts. We're seeing that with a new target he has for government cuts. NASA, Musk teams were there walking into a conflict of interest because his SpaceX rocket company, which, as we've covered, is effective, does all sorts of important things, is also not just a contractor, but one of NASA's largest contractors, to the tune of $14 billion since some of their most important engagements began in 2015. There are concerns about fair competition in contracting, the influence over NASA's direction, and whether funding priorities will shift in favor of Musk's own ventures. That is a very sort of open-ended or respectful way to put it in a Newsweek report. Of course, Elon Musk is renowned above all else for being good at his business, which involves bringing money towards his business. And he is basically daring anyone to stop him, or yes, you would expect him to continue to do that. And in terms of fairness to Mr. Musk, he has not publicly announced stepping back from his business goals in any way, while also using this new special government role. Musk has also gone at NASA for all sorts of things. They didn't agree, for example, on a staffed mission to Mars. Asked about the conflicts of interest on Tuesday, remember, we told you we were going to fact check all this. The White House is hiding Mr. Musk's basic financials. So they're not being transparent. They have decided that they're going to just use words like transparency or free speech and then do the opposite and see how long they get away with it. Here was a moment from that unusual set of statements in the Oval Office.
Well, all of our actions are fully public. So if you see anything, you say, like, wait a second, hey, Elon, that seems like maybe that's, there's a conflict there. It's not like people are going to be shy about saying that. They'll say it immediately.
None of that's true. And if someone's watching randomly and they are predisposed to liking Mr. Musk for whatever reason, his fame, his politics, his, again, legitimate business success, they might say, well, he said that it must be true, or it must be largely true or partly true. Well, maybe that's one of the things that he's been effective at, which we've also seen in politics. He just moves it all the way over here, but it's not true at all. They are not disclosing even his basic financials, let alone transparency around what they're doing at the different agencies, who the people are they've hired, the level of vetting and security clearances for all of Musk's people, if there's any wall between his business interests and what he's doing for the government, the data and sensitive materials that he's getting a hold of, is there any written restrictions on how that goes back to him enriching himself or using government access to go at his competitors? Zero transparency on that. And it is, again, Musk that Trump is empowering for some very controversial explorations, like an order to try to see if they can get away with having agencies remove probationary workers. Those are people who've been there under 2 years. It could affect about 200,000 people. It may be, depending on what the courts find, one of the ways they can get around some of these civil service protections. We're joined now by Atlantic staff writer and MSNBC contributor Mark Leibovich, the author of Thank You for Your Service, Donald Trump's Washington and the Price of Submission. Happy Friday. Happy Valentine's Day, Mark.
Thanks, Eric. Good to be with you.
Great to have you. Some things are complicated. Let's start simple. We don't need to be complicated for no reason. What do you see, given the journalist and chronicler you are, in Elon Musk saying the opposite of the truth? Not a shaded version, not what in the old days we would call spin, but just screaming that he's transparent when he won't even take, for example, a cabinet position that requires more legally binding disclosure or release his financials.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting jujitsu here. I mean, what you said is true. I mean, obviously, this is not transparency, but his nonchalance in some ways is basically an admission, which is saying that, yeah, this is transparent and that I'm standing here and I'm not really disputing it and I don't really care. And also implicitly, Donald Trump's voters don't really care, which I think is probably true. I mean, he didn't say that explicitly, but that's the implication here, which is that Donald Trump is not going to lose any support because Elon Musk looks like he's getting a special deal here to enrich himself on government contracts, whether it's true or not. I mean, I think the fact is they are dealing with a level of bandwidth and a level of sort of consequence-free environment that Trump world is sort of affording Donald Trump, which extends right now to Elon Musk. I think the larger issue is how much goodwill does Elon Musk ultimately have, one, with the public, but also with Donald Trump. I mean, at some point, this is going to be such a distraction, perhaps, that Donald Trump might feel like, why is everyone talking about this guy? Why is everyone asking questions about this guy? Is it hurting my larger agenda?
Do you think they've hit that point that Musk is overshadowing?
They don't seem to think so, because look, every day, he's doing a joint interview tonight with Sean Hannity and Donald Trump. So, I think we can look at body language, but we saw body language a couple days ago. It certainly looked awkward, but obviously didn't stop them from agreeing to doing a joint interview tonight. So, look, again, I think ultimately Donald Trump might see Elon Musk as a force multiplier, someone who can sort of double the disruption that he's trying to provide right off the bat. He feels there's a benefit to it. Again, Donald Trump's history of wanting to share a stage with people, whether it's an ally or an adversary, is not great. Usually there's a shelf life to these things. I do think that the more exposure there is, the risk, it sort of heightens that you're going to burn out quickly.
Yeah, well, we've seen that dynamic. They also know they're time limited. There's a lot of bluster, but the truth is they have their eye on the midterms. There is a low but not zero probability scenario where they could lose the House early. They have an election season that comes up that even in Trump's MAGA world eventually puts everyone's energy, as you know from covering Washington, towards who the next nominee might be, whether that's a Vance or a Musk-like figure. You said double the disruption. Maybe it's double the disruption, half the calories kind of energy. But there's also small indications that Musk, who manages attention very adroitly, is driving more of this. And he's not really fireable. If you imagine a hypothetical where he left American politics altogether for whatever reason, he still owns one of the most powerful platforms, especially on the right, in X. He still, as we showed, is a business partner with the government. And Reuters reports that the frustration is growing against top Trump aides with Musk. And it was Musk's idea to bring those reporters in on Tuesday to the Oval Office. You mentioned body language. We've seen what it's like when they set up two lecterns for whatever reason. We've seen them on the campaign trail. Here, the president was just sort of seated at the desk.
Right. I would quibble a little bit with the idea that he's not fireable. Obviously, he's going to keep control of Tesla. He's going to keep control of SpaceX. He's going to keep control of X. But, he's fireable in that when Donald Trump wants him to go away and leave, his side, he's going to go away. So, it might not be a formal position. It might not be, a Senate-approved position. But, ultimately, he serves one person, and he might forget that every once in a while. But when Donald Trump says it's time to go, it's going to be time to go. So, look, we have seen these fissures. I think, not just body language, too. There have been some explicit kind of comebacks at him, both from some Republican senators. And, even Steve Bannon a few weeks ago was pretty open about how he thinks that Elon Musk could be big trouble for the MAGA sensibility. So, look, again, I think this will only continue. The question is, how much runway is he going to get from Donald Trump?